Hi, friends. Before we get into today's episode, I want to share something I think is important. A lot of my episode ideas come from real client conversations that I'm having during the week, not in a way that shares anyone's private story or their details, but in the sense that I pay attention to the patterns that are showing up across coaching, the questions that women are asking, the places they feel stuck, the moments where they want to react, change everything, or decide that something is not working. And this week, the conversation kept coming up. Women were feeling like something had failed when what we actually needed to do was pause, look at the full picture, and understand the feedback. So this episode is timely. It is relevant. And honestly, it is exactly the kind of conversation that I wish more people had before they changed the whole plan out of frustration. Hi, friends. When the check engine light comes on in your car, you usually do not assume the entire car is ruined. You do not immediately sell the car. You do not slash the tires. You do not decide the car has no discipline. You look for information. You ask, what is the signal? What changed? What needs attention? Is this urgent? Is this a pattern? Or is this something that we just need to monitor? But when our body gives us feedback, we often do the opposite. The scale goes up and we panic. Our hunger increases and we judge it. Our energy dips and then we blame ourselves. A workout feels harder and we decide that we are going backward. A week feels messy and we call it a failure. Instead of asking, what is this showing? We jump straight to, what do I need to fix? And this is where coaching becomes different than reacting. Because if you were sitting with me in a client check-in and you told me, I feel like this is not working. I feel like my body should be responding faster. I feel like I need to change something. I feel like I failed this week. I would not immediately change your calories. I would not immediately add cardio. I would not immediately rewrite the plan. I would pause and I would ask, what does the data actually say? Not what does fear say, not what does frustration say, not what does one weigh-in say, not what does the part of you that wants relief right now say. What does the full picture say? Because a feeling can be honest and still not be the whole story. A hard week can feel like failure and still be feedback. Sometimes the next best step is not a new plan. Sometimes the next best step is learning how to read the one that you're already in. And that matters because if you keep reacting to every signal like something is broken, you may keep changing plans before you ever understand what your body, your habits, and your data are trying to show you. So today, we are slowing that pattern down. We are talking about the 4 F words: feelings, facts, failures, and feedback, and the difference between them. And then we are going to look at how to stop turning every uncomfortable week into a reason to start over. Welcome back to Your Relationships Are Keeping You Fat, the podcast where we look at the patterns that are shaping your health, your habits, and the way you experience yourself inside your body. I'm your host, Darla, and today we're talking about the 4 Fs: feelings, facts, failures, and feedback. Because when you are working towards change, especially something like changing your body composition, chasing fat loss, increasing your strength or your consistency, or just better health, you need to know the difference between what you feel, what the facts actually show, what you are calling a failure, and what might simply be feedback. This episode is practical because one of the biggest reasons that people keep changing plans too quickly is not because the plan stopped working. It is because they get uncomfortable before they had enough information. And discomfort loves to disguise itself as urgency. So today we are going to slow that down And we are going to talk about how to pause before reacting, how to look beyond the scale, how to use both subjective and objective data, and how to stop treating every hard week like proof that you need to start over. So let's start with feelings because feelings matter. How you feel in your body matters. Your energy matters. Your mood matters. Your hunger matters. Your stress matters. And your sense of confidence, motivation, and the emotional bandwidth that you have, it matters. I do not want you to hear this episode as ignore how you feel and only trust numbers because that is not what I mean. Feelings are information, but feelings are not always the full picture. You can feel like nothing is working while your consistency is actually improving. You can feel discouraged while your body is still adapting. You can feel bloated while your plan is still appropriate. You can feel heavier because you slept poorly, maybe you ate later, you had more sodium, you trained harder, maybe you're approaching your cycle, or you had a stressful week. You can feel like you failed when what actually happened is that life got harder and your system needs just a little bit more support. Feelings are valid. They deserve your attention, but they do not always deserve the authority to rewrite the plan. And that is the distinction. The goal is not to talk yourself out of what you feel. The goal is to let your feelings sit at the table without letting them run the whole meeting. Because if every feeling becomes a command, then you will keep changing direction before your body even has time to respond. And that is where many people get stuck, not because they're careless, not because they are not trying, but because the feeling becomes loud. And when disappointment gets loud, changing the plan can start to feel like it's the responsible thing to do. And this is one of the most common patterns that I see. Someone has a week where the result did not match the effort that they feel like they gave. And immediately they want to change something, whether it be their calories, their cardio, their macros, training, their steps, some supplements, meal timing, everything. And I understand why, because reactive change feels exciting. It gives you a sense of control and it feels like action. It feels like you are doing something with that frustration. And then it quiets the discomfort for a minute because now you have a new plan. And new plans feel hopeful. But not every uncomfortable week requires a new plan. Sometimes it requires a better observation. Sometimes it requires a steadier week. Sometimes it requires asking, do I actually have enough information to make this decision? Because one weigh-in is not enough information. One bloated morning is not enough information. One harder workout is not enough information. One off day is not enough information. And one emotional reaction is definitely not the same thing as evidence. Sometimes the most disciplined thing that you can do is not change the plan. Sometimes the most disciplined thing that you can do is pause long enough to understand what the plan is actually showing you. This is the line that I want you to carry through this episode. Pause before the pivot. Because when you pause before the pivot, you give yourself a chance to separate what is emotionally true in the moment from what is actually supported by the bigger picture. And that is where coaching becomes different than reacting. We do not ignore the feeling. We just do not let the feeling be the only thing that's driving the next decision. So this is where I like to ask the question of, what does the data actually say? And I do not mean that in a cold, clinical, detached way. I mean, let's look at the full picture before we decide that something failed. Because a lot of the times when someone says, this is not working, what they really mean is, I feel discouraged. I expected a different result. I am afraid I am wasting time. I wanted more reassurance this week. And that is human. It makes sense, especially if you've had seasons where you worked hard and felt like your body did not respond the way that you had hoped. But before we adjust anything, we have to ask whether the facts support that change. And when I say facts, I am not only talking about the scale. The scale is one piece of information, but it is not the whole conversation. That is why inside client check-ins, body weight is only one data box. It matters, we look at it, we track it, we pay attention to the trend, but it sits inside a larger group of information because I do not want one number isolated from the rest of the story. I want to see it next to the waist measurements, the progress photos, how much water you've had, you're looking at your sleep duration and quality. I want to see it next to your recovery readiness score, your resting heart rate. I want to see it within your training performance, where you're at in your cycle, your hunger signals. I want to see it inside of your energy level, your mood, with understanding your digestion, looking at how many steps you had that week, where your stress levels were at, and how the week actually felt. Body weight by itself can tell us something, but body weight in context tells us so much more. It helps us ask better questions. Is this a real trend or a normal fluctuation? Is the body responding slowly, or are we looking at a week with poor sleep, lower activity, higher stress, more soreness in our PMS week, or any digestion changes that we've noted? Are we seeing a reason to adjust, or are we seeing a reason to observe just a little bit longer? That is a very different conversation than the scale went up, so the plan failed. And this is where subjective and objective data both matter, and we track both. Your subjective data is what you are experiencing in your body with your energy, your mood, your hunger, your satiety, any cravings, your stress, your sleep quality, digestion, soreness, confidence, your motivation, and how manageable the plan feels. That information matters because your lived experience matters. If hunger is extreme, your energy is low, your mood is poor, and your workouts feel terrible, that is feedback, even if the scale is moving. Then we have objective data, and these are the things that we can measure a little bit more directly, such as your waist measurement, your scale trend over time, your water intake, how many steps, or your activity level, your recovery readiness score, your resting heart rate, training performance, how much weight you lifted in the gym, your cardio fitness score, where you're at in your cycle, your sleep duration, meal consistency, how much protein you've had. We'll look at your check-in photos and notice how your clothes fit. Those pieces help us see patterns that feelings alone may not show clearly. And this is where coaching becomes less about reacting and more about reading the story. Because maybe you feel like nothing worked, but your waist measurement is down. Maybe the scale is up, but you trained harder, your soreness is higher, and your period is due in 3 days. Maybe you feel like the week was messy, but you ate 3 meals more consistently than you have in the past 3 months. Maybe you feel like you failed because one day was off, but the data shows that you moved more, you drank more water, and you returned faster than you usually do. That matters, and that is not something to overlook. The goal is not to become robotic. The goal is not to talk yourself out of your feelings. The goal is to place the feeling inside the full picture, because feelings give us information, while facts give us context, and context helps us make better decisions. And when we look at it that way, 1 week becomes information, not a final answer, and it's not proof that something failed. Just information we can place beside the rest of the picture. If you ate more consistently for 1 week and the scale stayed the same, that does not automatically mean it did not work. It may mean that your body needs more time. It may mean that your activity level was lower. Maybe your stress was higher. It may mean that your sleep was poor or that your cycle is shifting. It may mean that digestion is backed up. It may mean that water retention is masking the change on the scale. Or it may mean that the week was better than before, but still not consistent enough yet to create the outcome that you expected. And that is not a reason to panic. That is context. And the context matters because it keeps you from reacting too quickly. So the question is not only, did the scale move? The better question is, what happened this week? Did you move more? Did you get more steps? Did you train with better effort? Did you eat 3 meals each day? Did you drink more water? Did you get to bed earlier? Did hunger feel more stable? Did you have fewer reactive eating moments? Did you recover better? Did food feel less chaotic? Did you return faster after an off day? Because if something went in your favor, you do not need to ignore that just because one metric did not reward you yet. You can ask, what worked this week? And how do I repeat more of that? That is how progress becomes more stable. Not by chasing a new plan every time you feel discouraged, but by learning how to read the week with more honesty, more patience, and more context. Now let's talk about failure, because that word shows up fast. The scale went up, failure. You missed a workout, failure. You ate more than planned, failure. You felt hungry, failure. You had PMS cravings, failure. You did not get the result you wanted after 1 week of effort, failure. But when we call everything failure, we stop learning from it. Failure shuts the conversation down, but feedback opens the conversation up. And that is a very different experience because feedback gives us somewhere to go. A signal is not the same thing as a breakdown. And the goal is not to panic at the signal. The goal is to read it. So if the scale goes up, we ask what else was going on. Was activity lower than usual? Or did activity increase a lot and create more soreness? Was sleep poor? Was stress higher? Were meals later than normal? Was your sodium higher? Was your digestion slower? Is your period coming? Did you have one higher intake day? And did that one day turn into 3? Were you under eating earlier in the day and then feeling more reactive at night? None of those questions are asked to shame you. They are asked to understand the pattern. The next 6 months are going to pass either way. And the question is, will your habits, your body, and your energy feel any different? If you're ready for that to change, this is where we start. My signature 6-month body and lifestyle transformation is my most comprehensive coaching experience. This is for women who want structure, guidance, and support they can actually follow, not another plan to start over with. Inside, you'll get personalized training delivered through my coaching app, nutrition guidance tailored to your body and your lifestyle, weekly check-ins for accountability and adjustments, and direct access to me for support along the way. This is about building consistency, trust with your body, and results that actually last. You can learn more and apply at missnewbootyfitness.com/coaching. That's missnewbootyfitness.com/coaching. Now back to the show. Because the scale going up may be feedback about water retention, your recovery, your stress, digestion, your cycle, inconsistency, or needing more time. But if we immediately label it as failure, we miss the actual lesson. The same thing applies to a missed workout. A missed workout is not automatically failure. It might be feedback. Maybe the workout was scheduled at a time that never realistically works. Maybe your evening energy is lower than you want to admit. Maybe you need to train before the house gets busy. Maybe you need a shorter backup workout. Maybe you need to communicate with your family earlier. Maybe you need to stop planning your hardest training day after your most demanding work day. All of that is helpful information. Or Maybe you had a hard eating day. That does not have to become, I have no control. Instead, it can become, what happened before that? Did I skip meals? Was I stressed? Was I tired? Did I wait too long to eat? Was I emotionally overloaded? Was I around food with no plan? Did I need relief, not just food? Again, this is not about excusing the behavior. It is about understanding the setup, because once you understand the setup, you can support it differently. And that is where your real change begins. Sometimes the most honest answer is not change the plan. Sometimes the most honest answer is we need another week of clean information. And I know that is not exciting. It does not give you the emotional hit of a new plan. It does not feel like a dramatic reset. It does not give you that immediate sense of, okay, now I'm doing something. But patience is doing something, especially when patience keeps you from reacting too quickly. Sometimes the practical next step is simple. Repeat the plan. Keep your meals consistent. Keep your water steady. Keep your activity from swinging drastically up or down. Train with honest effort. Pay attention to your sleep and notice where you are in your cycle and collect another week of information. That is not passive. That is how we clean up the data. Because if every week looks completely different with different meals, different water, different steps, different sleep, different weekends, different levels of effort, then it becomes harder to tell what is actually working. So sometimes the answer is not, we need to change the plan. Sometimes the answer is, we need to make the inputs more consistent so the feedback becomes clearer. That is where patience becomes practical, not passive, but practical. So, this is the phrase that I want you to remember. Pause before the pivot. Say it out loud if you need to. Pause before the pivot. Before you lower calories, pause. Before you add cardio, pause. Before you decide the plan is wrong, pause. Before you call the whole week a failure, pause. Before you start searching for a new strategy, pause and ask yourself, am I making this decision from clarity or am I making it from discomfort? Because those are not the same thing. Clarity sounds like we have seen this pattern for several weeks. My measurements, photos, adherence, energy, hunger, and recovery are pointing in the same direction. Or it sounds like the plan is not producing the response that we expected. Or we have enough consistent information to make a thoughtful adjustment. While discomfort sounds like, I feel frustrated today. I thought the scale would be lower. I feel bloated. I'm scared this is not working. I need to do something so I feel back in control. That does not mean that the discomfort is wrong. It means that discomfort should be acknowledged before it becomes the decision maker. This is where so many people change things too soon, not because they have enough evidence, but because changing something gives them relief. And I get it. A new plan feels comforting. It feels like control. It feels like movement. It feels like you are no longer sitting in uncertainty. But sometimes uncertainty is not a problem to escape. Sometimes it is a moment to observe. So before you pivot, pause. Look at the full picture. Ask what the data says. Ask what the feeling is asking for. Ask whether you need a plan to change or whether you need one more steady week. That pause can save you from making a decision that your body did not actually need. This is where I want you to have something practical that you can use today. Not next month, not when you feel calm, and not when the week goes well. today. When you feel the urge to react, change everything, or decide that the plan failed, walk yourself through the 4 F's: feelings, facts, failures, feedback. I want this to become a check-in filter for you. Not just something you hear today, but something that you can use the next time that your brain wants to change everything. First, what am I feeling? And I want you to be honest, not polished and not what you think that you should feel. What are you actually feeling? Are you feeling discouraged, bloated, frustrated, anxious, impatient, embarrassed, afraid this will not work, afraid that you are wasting your time, afraid your body is different now, afraid that you're falling behind? Name it, because your unnamed feelings usually do not stay quiet. They turn into urgency. They turn into that, I need to change something. I ruined it. This is not working. So start by naming the feeling. Second, what are the facts? What actually happened this week? Not the dramatic story, not the worst case interpretation, but the facts. How many meals did I eat consistently? How was my water? How was my sleep? What was my step average? Did I train? How was my effort? How was recovery? Where am I in my cycle? How was digestion? What does the trend show? Do I have one data point or do I have a pattern? Third, what am I calling failure? This one matters because sometimes we call something failure when it is actually feedback. Am I calling the scale failure? Am I calling the missed workout failure? Am I calling the off-plan meal failure? Am I calling hunger failure? Am I calling PMS cravings failure? Am I calling one hard day failure? Am I calling slower progress failure? Am I calling being human failure? When you name what you are calling failure, you can start to question whether it actually deserves that label. Maybe it was not failure. Maybe it was a signal. Maybe it was a setup issue. Maybe it was a pattern to understand. Maybe it was information. Fourth, what is the feedback? This is where we coach from. This is where we stop spiraling and we start learning. What did this week teach me? Did I need more sleep? Did I need to eat earlier in the day? Did I need to keep my activity steadier? Did I need to drink more water? Did I need a better weekend plan? Did I need to stop letting one off day become 3? Did I need a backup workout? Did I need more support at home? Did I need to repeat the plan before changing it? Did I need to give my body more time? And then choose one response, just one, not a complete overhaul, but one response from the feedback. And maybe that response is to keep your breakfast consistent, maybe to get enough water above baseline, maybe to get water above the same baseline each day, maybe to hold your steps steady instead of swinging all over the place, maybe to go to bed 30 minutes earlier or repeat the same meals for another week, maybe to plan the weekend before it starts or keep the training plan the same, maybe to track the trend instead of reacting to one weigh in, or maybe to ask for help before the week gets away from you. That is the 4 F's. Feelings tell you what is happening internally. Facts show you what happened practically. Failures reveal what you are interpreting harshly, and feedback shows you what to do next. That is how you stop reacting to every hard moment like it means that you are failing. And this is where I think coaching does matter so much, because the goal is not to make you emotionally detached from your progress. The goal is to help you become more skilled at reading it. So let's walk through this like a client check in. She comes into check in already bracing herself. She has looked at the scale and she feels discouraged. And now she is searching for the thing to change. So she says, I ate better this week and the scale went up. I feel like this is not working. So first, we're going to name the feeling. It's frustration, discouragement, maybe some fear, and maybe that familiar thought of, here we go again. But then we look at the facts. Did she eat more consistently? Maybe yes. Did she drink more water? Maybe more than before, but still not steady. Did she train? Yes. And she pushed harder, so her soreness is higher. Did her activity change? Maybe her workouts improved, but her overall steps dropped because work was busy. Where's she at in her cycle? And maybe she's in her PMS. How was her digestion? Maybe it was slower than normal. How was sleep? Maybe she got about 5 or 6 hours. Now we have a very different conversation because we understand that the scale is going up, but it does not automatically mean that the plan failed. It may mean that her body is holding water from the soreness, the stress, her cycle, her slower digestion with lower activity, poor sleep, and inconsistent recovery. So the feedback might be keep your meals consistent, bring your water up, hold your training steady, and keep the steps from dropping too low. I want you to prioritize your sleep, pay attention to your digestion, and give the body more time. And give your body more time before we change the plan. That is very different from cut calories and add cardio. One response is rooted in information, while the other is rooted in panic. This is where coaching becomes so important because sometimes the client is looking for the fastest way to feel back in control. But my job is to help her make the decision that best supports the outcome long term, not just the decision that quiets her discomfort today. And after we understand the feedback, this is a question that I want to ask her next. So, what worked this week? Because when someone feels discouraged, her brain usually goes straight to what did not work. The scale did not move. The week was not perfect. The weekend was harder. The plan felt messy. The result did not match the effort. But inside that same week, there is usually something that we can build on. Maybe the days that she ate breakfast were the days that she had fewer cravings at night. Maybe the days that she walked more were the days that her mood felt better. That also matters. Maybe drinking more water helped with headaches or afternoon fatigue. Maybe planning dinner kept her from grabbing whatever was easiest when everyone was hungry. Maybe she did not get every workout in, but she returned faster than she normally does. Maybe she got to bed earlier on 2 nights and those mornings felt a little calmer. All of that matters. Because sometimes the next best step is not a completely different plan. Sometimes that next best step is more reps of the same thing that already happened. Protect breakfast again, keep your water steady again, repeat the step range again, plan your evening meal again, pack the gym bag again, choose the earlier bedtime again. All of that may not feel dramatic, but it creates a clearer signal for your body. And the clearer the inputs become, the clearer the feedback becomes. That is how we stop chasing change from panic and we start building progress from patterns. A feeling can be honest and still not be the full story. A hard week can be feedback without becoming a verdict on who you are. And a plan does not need to be changed every time your discomfort gets loud. Sometimes the most supportive thing that you can do is pause before the pivot. So, if you want to apply this today, do not wait until the end of the month. Do not wait until your next big reset. Use the 4 F's this week. Use it after your next weigh in, after your next hard day, after your next missed workout, after your next moment where you feel like nothing is working. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? What are the facts? What am I calling a failure? What is the feedback? Then choose one response, not 5, but 1. And maybe that response is drink more water tomorrow, eat 3 meals, keep breakfast consistent, hold my steps steady, get to bed 30 minutes earlier, plan dinner before the day gets away from you, repeat the same plan for another week, track the trend instead of reacting to one way in, or ask for support before the week becomes chaotic. That is practical. That is grounded. And that is how you stop letting emotion make every health decision for you. Not by ignoring the emotion, but by giving it context. The goal is not to become emotionally detached from your progress. The goal is to become more skilled at reading it. So this week, just notice. Just notice when you feel the urge to react, the urge to change everything, the urge to tighten control, the urge to call the week a failure, the urge to abandon what may already be starting to work. And before you move into another plan, say this out loud if you need to. Pause before the pivot. Then ask yourself, do I have enough information to change this? Or am I trying to escape the discomfort of not knowing yet? There's no fixing, no judging, just notice. Your feelings matter, but they are not the only data. Your scale matters, but it is not the whole story. Your hard days matter, but they are not automatic failures. And your body's response matters, but it needs to be understood in context. You do not need to react to every uncomfortable week. You do not need to change the plan every time progress feels slow. You do not need to turn one data point into a verdict. Sometimes the next right step is not a dramatic pivot. Sometimes it is just a pause, a question, a pattern, a little bit more evidence, and one practical response chosen from clarity instead of panic. That is how you stop making every hard moment mean that you are failing. And that is how you begin building trust in the process that you are already in. Alignment is not only what you set up before the week begins, it is also how you respond when the week does not go exactly how you hoped. If this episode brought someone to mind, share it with her, especially the person who keeps changing the plan because she feels like nothing is working, when what she may really need is support, patience, and a better way to read the feedback. Sometimes most powerful shift is learning to ask, what does the data actually say, before deciding that the whole thing failed? So as you move through this week, I want you to pay attention to the moments where your feelings try to make the whole decision. The weigh-in, the bloating, the hard workout, the lower energy day, the missed habit, the week that did not look as impressive as you hoped. And before you react, pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling? What are the facts? What am I calling a failure? And what is the feedback? Because when you learn how to separate those, you can stop making every hard moment mean that you are failing. And you start becoming someone who can respond with clarity. Stay connected to that, and I'll see you in the next episode.